I have no doubt that if you looked at the world in 2022 and then used a time machine to go back to 1950, you would see a very different place. This is a question that has been occupying my mind for a while. Why don't men approach women as frequently as they used to? If you go outside now, you won't see it happening nearly as frequently as it did in the 1950s. When approaching a stranger to introduce yourself was the only option available. There was a time before smartphones, the internet, and any kind of social media platforms existed. I know that many of you won't remember this, but it was nothing like what we have today. Like in other places with a similar social system, back then, if you wanted a lady, you either had to physically approach her or go to her father who lived nearby. Back then, attracting a woman needed a lot of work, and women lacked the means of communication with men all over the world that they have today. Similar to what we have now, she had two options: the local men she knew, or the one guy who just so happened to be passing through her tiny town at the time, and who she ultimately fell in love with. As a result, things were simpler back then, and more guys would approach a lady because they couldn't interact with one another. He had no way of knowing whether he would ever see her again, so if he did not take the shot, he might miss out on the lady who would one day become his wife. Isn't that absurd? If we consider how things are done today, none of that is expected of us, and people are more disengaged than ever. Men hardly longer approach women, and people hardly interact physically with one another. I think it's important to start a conversation to figure out what went wrong and what it can potentially signify for the future, because practically everyone is connected and more accessible. Men already dreaded rejection and humiliation from women, so for a guy to approach despite the possibility of rejection, make fun of him, or call him a creep shows that he values the potential reward. The average guys, on the other hand, are perceived by women in our society as predators, creeps, sexual assaulters, and rapists. Men finding it more challenging to approach women as a result. If so, why would a man want to talk to a woman? And why don't men approach women as they used to? Guys assess the likelihood of unfavorable outcomes against the potential advantages of pursuing a given course of action before making decisions. This is something you need to keep in mind while interacting with men. Take into account how males view marriage as proof of this. The majority of men carefully consider the advantages and disadvantages of making that commitment, including what they stand to lose if the marriage does not work out. The same principle should be applied when contacting women, because women have contributed to the process's reputation for risk and disappointment. Men have decided that if the normal male were to approach the typical woman in a proper manner with the purpose of striking up a conversation with her, it is no longer worthwhile for them to follow through with it. The average woman would frequently degrade the average man. I've seen films when a male tries to talk to a lady without coming across as weird or unpleasant, that the woman completely humiliates him. As I watch the video, I find myself wondering why on earth I would want to approach a woman in this day and age. In order to get attention and laughs, the woman recorded the encounter while spitting the narrative that he was a weirdo. I'm sitting here trying to understand why something like this is happening. We must acknowledge that different guys cause different women to react in different ways. I understand that you might be unclear about that, so let me explain what this actually means for you. I want each of you to consider the idea of status and how people interact with one another based on their opinions of value. Take into account the times you have been approached by someone begging you for money or by a homeless person who appeared to be dirty in your own life. The same is true for women, despite the fact that the situation is substantially worse now than it was a century ago. You immediately adopted a defensive attitude, preferring not to speak to the individual or grant them anything in response to their request. Women should always exercise additional caution while they are out and about, because they never know when a male might take them against their will. The issue arises, though, when a woman is out in public with a large group of people present and publicly humiliates a man for speaking to her despite knowing that she is somewhat safe. No way this is where the issue is. Jeff Bezos is a well-known millionaire with prestige, authority, and power. A lady of that standing would never dare insult or degrade a man who is obviously superior to her in every way. As a result, as you can see, everything ultimately comes down to a man's standing and the value that a woman perceives based on his appearance, manner of speech, and approach to the woman. We must remember that, as I indicated before, a woman will treat various guys in different ways depending on how she sees them. And she will treat the man like trash if she does not think he is superior to her. It is important that we take this into account. If we look a bit closer, the only conclusion we can get is that modern women no longer appreciate the average male or men in general. This is due to the fact that, to get back to the point I made about status, if a woman is well known for treating the common and average men who approach her with disdain, he who thought she would treat Jeff Bezos in the same way will have a lesser social standing. She will treat a man with respect and be more open to the idea of a romantic relationship with him, though, if she feels that he is superior to her. Similarly, contrast a woman's chat with her supervisor. Men are opting to entirely withdraw from the dating environment as a result of seeing how women treat other males who look like them compared to the high-value men. All of this is being said to make it plain to you that modern women no longer respect males. And I think the majority of men are aware of this and have decided to avoid interacting with modern women. Men have therefore realized that women's attitudes toward them will only deteriorate, and as a result, they are no longer taken in by women's BS. Men are realizing that approaching women results in an unpleasant encounter where they jeopardize their reputation and potentially even their freedom. I don't know if you guys are aware, but men have had the police called on them simply because they approached a woman who didn't like them. As a result, men are saying to heck with it, and that they would be better off not approaching women. Why in the heck would guys put themselves through all of that when they stand to receive nothing in return? Men are saying to hell with that, and I'll be better off not contacting women. It's absurd that we've reached a place in time when males must weigh the risks involved in approaching a woman and decide that the juice isn't worth the squeeze because, previous to the 1990s, women were not this uncomfortable just because a man wanted to talk to them. Here we are at the moment. I no longer approach the x-axis for this main reason. Now that we've discussed that, I think it's safe to say that everyone agrees that modern women's attitudes about men are quite repulsive. Let's look into the issue of whether modern women can even be contacted. People judge you first and foremost based on that first impression. If you don't seem approachable, they won't even try to approach you. Modern women frequently convey the sense that they have something lodged up their butts when they move through society, let alone when they chat to you. Men avoid these kinds of women because they give off the sense that they don't want to converse to them, particularly men. This is especially true when you take into account that encouraging a woman to smile is considered as misogynistic and indicative of a woman hater. You can understand why guys shy away from interacting with these females. Guys, understand the struggle you go through when you see a woman you like but are hesitant to approach her because she has done up her face to resemble the devil himself. In today's modern world, ladies have entirely forgotten how to smile and seem kind in public. This is largely because almost all of them have a resting bitch face, which, to be quite honest, either terrifies or repels guys. Men have decided to stay away from women and refrain from making contact with them as a result. You might not encounter the same difficulties in public and private settings if a man sees a woman he's interested in and wants to strike up a conversation with, but consider this point of view. Would you go up to a man who always seems angry, as if at any moment he might lose his cool and become violent and try to strike up a conversation with him? Nevertheless, she conveys the impression that she is unwilling to engage in conversation. They'll presume that the woman doesn't want to talk to anyone, therefore you won't want to approach her. Despite the fact that smiling, seeming approachable, and having an open body language are crucial, modern women don't care and are ready to change. Similarly, males won't approach women, and that will be the end of it. However, when guys don't approach women, they sulk and moan about how no one is talking to them. Ladies, what do you think we should do? Either you'll give guys the impression that you want to be contacted, or you'll harden your exterior, making it impossible for them to approach you. The choice is yours, ladies, so feel free to do whatever the hell you like. The third and final reason why males aren't contacting women, in my opinion, is that they've realized relationships with women aren't really worthwhile. And as a result, they have made the decision to completely give up dating and relationships. We don't want any scrubs, you're too short. I don't date broke guys, you're unattractive. And don't talk to me if you don't have X, Y, and Z, are all things that men have heard. When they are sick and wary of the scenario, why on earth would males want to approach and chat to women? Because modern women cheat on men more frequently than ever before, cheat in relationships at a higher rate than ever before, and treat men worse and worse. Some men are simply fed up with them. As time passes, some men have decided to speak up against the effect of you stay over there and only treat Chad and Tyrone well, while I'll be going my own way and avoiding dealing with the mistreatment of contemporary women. As a result, we are in this situation right now, because guys are not entering relationships and taking love drugs on women is useless. Thanks to YouTube channels that teach men how to better understand women, guys are starting to come to their senses. They won't spend the rest of their life chasing after women, and steadily more and more guys are realizing that the system is skewed. We'll just stay put since women are only going to get worse, protecting our peace of mind and independence from women and the bad behavior they display. Because that is not how things will work. We don't need a girlfriend, we don't need a wife, and we don't even need to talk to women anymore. Moving forward, dating and marriage offer no advantages, and as a result, our men have ceased approaching women since we don't care about doing so, which should assist solve the issue. From now on, everything will be managed in this way. Any of you males who are still interested in dating have my prior judgment on you. I don't mind if you still want to date, so good for you. You should be aware that by acting in this way, you run the risk of being detained, humiliated, and degraded in front of others, as well as being falsely accused of a crime you haven't committed. It's all on you as long as you are conscious of the risks and decide to go with the activity anyhow. Men no longer need to approach random women because they have alternative options, including paying a woman directly to leave when she puts her 10 toes up, using sugar daddy websites like Seeking, and using online dating platforms like Tinder. It doesn't make sense to me why I would subject myself to the humiliation of being rejected in front of others when I could just pay a woman to sleep with me. At the end of the day, all I want is for her legs to be slung over my shoulders. Therefore, why in the world would I waste my time conversing with ladies? You get what I'm saying? Because we can get what we want without having to contact women, males are not approaching them as frequently as they formerly did.